with Tony, Randy, and Chris.
Right.
What did you like and did not like during the recording and like the beginning of the LA scene for you guys? Was there anything like you really liked, didn't like, or that whole scene?
I would say the most recent memory is what happened this past summer, because we digitized everything from our 2-inch masters, put it on, for digital archive. I had not heard a lot of this stuff since we did it. And the thing that hit me was two things. Number one was Randy and Tony's vocals. Little suckers could sing. I mean, they were really good. I forgot how good they were.
That album was incredible.
Well, it gets a little better than that, because we demoed that first record 3 times before we recorded it. By the time we got to the 4th set of demos, which is the album it had started to lose some of its enthusiasm. The first set of demos was good. Same, all the songs Love Machine, I Want to Be Somebody on it. But by the time we got to the second set of demos, they were a little more polished, but they are vicious sounding. And what struck me listening to them was, if I had it to do over again, I would have never recorded the first album that We would have put out the demos.
Really?
Now, to right that wrong, we're going to do an anthology in 24, and those demos are going to be part of it.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
You guys will get to hear what I heard that made my jaw drop.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is any live footage of that Live in the Row album?
There's various things, but what we found? YouTube has really made a lot of video stuff obsolete, and there's more things you can find on YouTube.
That's it.
Yeah, I would think so.
Wow.
We see stuff on YouTube we didn't even know existed. So because people smuggle in cameras and things like that, you don't know that's out there, but they feel they can, safe enough to put it on now. So we're constantly seeing stuff we never knew existed. So, yes, sir.
Was your goal in the 80s to be the antithesis of hair metal? Poppy hair metal that was out?
I wouldn't say it was a conscious thought. When we were doing those early demos that I was talking about, the place that we were recording in, there was a problem in the studio one day. A piece of gear broke down, and it was going to take 4 or 5 hours to get it fixed. So we didn't have anything to do, so there was a movie theater across the street, and Road Warrior was playing over there. And we had been wanting to see it. We hadn't seen it yet. I sit there through it twice, watching, and my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The creativity that was in that movie. We stole everything. And the funny part was, we never got busted for it. We thought everybody's going to nail our hides to the wall on this. Nobody ever said anything, so they weren't going to say anything. We weren't going to say anything. But we stole everything from that movie. The rack came from there, the sign. The idea of the saw blades were not in that movie, but what I took away from the movie was, what would you do if you were forced into a situation where you had to scavenge to live, and what you wore ended up being as much offensive as defensive. So the concept of the saw blades, which did come later, but I don't think the saw blades would have happened had I not seen that movie. So fast forward 5 years to Headless. Headless was the line in the sand that differentiated us from everybody else that had come before that, because we weren't, I had reached a point where I just didn't want to, I couldn't write I Want to Be Somebody Again or Love Machine Again. I didn't want to do that. And I was maturing as a songwriter, I was maturing as an artist, as a human. Because who you are 5 years ago is not who you are today. So I just couldn't keep doing the same thing. So we take early demos, which will be part of that anthology that we did on Headless, to Capitol. They listen to it, they go, this is not the record you should be making. You should be making the Love Machine Part 2. So I can't do that anymore. Record comes out first week, it goes gold, and they're all happy and all that stuff. So. And the same thing happened again when we did The Idol. they heard some of the early stuff and then they go, this is not the record you should be making. You should be making Headless Part 2. And it's like, you can't listen to it. How, okay. Yes, sir.
Do you have a coolest moment or show on this tour so far?
Oh boy, I'd say the Ryman from a couple of nights ago. That was Mecca for us. I mean, going into the Ryman Auditorium where, you know, my mom was from Houston, Southern girl, born and raised. And, you know, so I grew up with all those, hearing those records around the house. And to be standing on that stage where all those guys stood, boy, I mean, if you can't feel that, something's wrong with
We were going to
it.
come see it now. We were coming back from California.
That was, I mean, we hung around after the show, after everybody was gone. We just walked around the auditorium. You know, it was just the pictures on the wall, the history that's in that place. I mean, they had Loretta Lynn's funeral there 3 weeks ago on that stage where I was standing there singing. You know, so it's harried.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
So KFD is one of my favorite albums, and a lot of bands from the 80s when they like came into the 90s, it kind of went like the way of like grunge. You kind of did like a complete opposite direction and made this like awesome like alternate universe W.A.S.P, as we call it, like an industrial meets W.A.S.P, like from the 80s. Like, what were you listening to musically at that time that made you kind of like?
It wasn't
that
what we were
style?
listening to. The first time we went to Europe in '84, we went into some of those German discos, and we heard the sound that what would later be called industrial. We heard the sound that was coming out, and it wasn't really rock and roll. It was more dance music, but it sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. Dang, 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 dang. And we listened to it, we said, shit, this is way heavier than what we're doing. You know, and this is a dance club. You know, so we never forgot that. And then when it came time to do the record, Chris had just gone through a divorce. Lita divorced him, or she divorced, somebody divorced somebody. And I had just come out of a relationship of 3 years with a girl that I was with, didn't end well. Him and I were just two accidents looking for a place to happen. We were pissed off at the world, you know, and we ended up making what I still think today is the most imaginative, graphically lyrical record we ever made. I mean, the imagery that's on that record is it's amazing. You know,
The pig on stage.
it's, but you know, the obvious question is, will you do it again? We had to be in a really dark place to do that, and if that's what it takes to do that, man, I don't want to do that again. Yes, sir.
I sat with Lemmy in the Rainbow Room, and he spoke very highly of you. And he said something that was very impactful. He said, when I die, there's going to be a short break between albums. So my question / request is, release what you have hidden.
Well, that'll be part of that anthology, you know.
Probably a question that you've heard from many times before, but which country what's the best for you to visit and play in, and which other countries would you like to play in that you haven't been to?
We've not played in China, but we've heard horror stories about it.
Like what?
I got a friend of mine who was in a really, really popular band. As a matter of fact, just elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he said they did some shows there, and it was absolute chaos. You know, he recommended don't ever go there. You know. So, but as far as the best country, I wouldn't say it's a country. I would say it's the audiences more than anything, because that can vary from place to place. Because if the band is not really on, sometimes the audience senses that. Then there are times where the audience can, the band can be really good and the audience just sits there like they're on some sort of drug, you know, and that's a little hard to endure. I mean, imagine you going out on a date with some guy and you look great, you know, and he's just sitting there looking around disinterested. It's a little bit of the same thing, you know. So, like I said, I wouldn't say it's any geographic location. It's more down to the audiences themselves. Yes, sir. Nothing?
So in the 80s, how did you stay off the cocaine, alcohol, pill, heroin trained as so many other people.
Focus. You know, you got to keep your eyes on the prize. You know, what do you want in life? You know, or I've often said the greatest thing anybody can be blessed with is an obsession. You know, so what is it you want? You know, because you've heard the expression, it's harder to stay here than it is to get here. You have no idea. I mean, you got to really, really want it. And if you're doing things that are going to distract you from what it is you do, you're cruising for a bruising. You know, I had one summer, the summer of '86, where I let my hair down, so to speak, and I was just being a rock star. I'd go into the 7-Eleven, and I was on 20% of the covers in the magazine rack. I was on TV every time I turned it on, and my head was the size of this room. And I was eating it up with a spoon, and I made a shitty record because of it. And that scarred me so bad, I vowed I would never do that again. But that was the knot I need jerked into my tail to get me to recognize you've got to stay focused. Because you can go play rock star if you want to, but you ain't going to be there very long if you keep doing it. Yes, sir.
Well, I picked up my friend from Peru today.
Right?
From the airport, he came over from Peru.
I ain't paying for his ticket.
Are there plans to record a new album soon?
It's already in the works right now. We hope it'll be out by summer.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for coming to Orlando. Too bad you couldn't make it to Fort Lauderdale. Preface my question: I'm a medic, studying to be a physician, and I've only heard snippets about your incident with your sparkler codpiece. What actually happened, and how badly were you damaged?
Boom.
Just boom.
When we used to do that routine, it was a quarter stick of dynamite.
Ooh.
And we had tested it. We started in Japan about 4 months earlier. We tested it and tested it. And for those of you that may not know, this was this flaming codpiece that used to shoot stuff out. And we tested it and tested it and tested it. Everything, got it down to where it was the first couple times we tested it. The crew guy that was holding it with a towel, and it caught on fire and left these gaping burn marks about that big, and we thought, no, we don't really want to do that. So let's see if we can make this a little safer. So we got it down. We got where it was fine. The tour starts in Dublin, Ireland. We go out the first night, everything's going okay, and this thing had a belt pack on it with a battery that had what's called an electronic match. It's what guys use in special effects to do stuff in movies and stuff. So I hit the button, there's a safety on it, but there's also a detonator switch. So you hit the safety, hit the detonator, when I do, kaboom. And it lifts me about 6 inches off the stage, but that wasn't the big part. The guys at front of house, which sound man, light man, probably about 35 yards away, so said the concussive effect hit them in the chest and moved them back off of their desk. So that's how hard it was. It burnt all the hair off my legs down to my knees. Everything in the general vicinity. I couldn't feel anything from the waist down. And it scared the crap out of me because I was afraid to look down. I thought everything was gone.
I bet it did.
So we got up, made it to the dressing room. Can hear a pin drop in the dressing room. This is opening night. Everybody's thinking the tour's over, we're going home. And I can tell everybody's just nervous as a cat. And so I thought I gotta say something to break this mood here. So I just looked around the room and I said to the guys, I said, you know, we wrote better songs, we wouldn't have to do crap like this. So that kind of broke the tension, and everybody then realized I was okay. So what they did, the crew, they went back, you know, I told the guys, I said, go out and assemble as many pieces of it as you can. Let's see if we can find out what happened. So like, you know, any other forensic thing, you know, we went out and put the pieces together, and we figured it out. What happened? These things, they were about 6 inches long, and about 3/4 of an inch around, but they had a cap on the very head of it. The cap is supposed to blow off, and then the sparks would go forward. What happened from the time we left LA till we got to Dublin, the compression in the plane caused the caps to shrink down. So explosions will look for the easiest way out, but because the head of that cap was literally frozen into place, instead of going this way, it went this way.
Ouch.
Now, we had the codpiece that I was wearing, the one that's on the animal cover is about an eighth of an inch thick. The one, right, but the one we had done for the flaming codpiece was about 1/4 of an inch thick. They were able to get it and piece it back together, and the thing flexed like an accordion. That is the only thing that kept me from being a permanent soprano. Yes. And so that's extreme trauma. Like I said, when you make a regular record, if it doesn't do well, everybody goes, well, I try to get another shot next time. When you announce to the world that you're going to do something different, and you're going to do something special, the journalists lie in the woods, in the weeds, and wait for you to fail. Because if you succeed, they will worship you like nobody else. But if you fail, they will rip you to ribbons because you dared to be different. You dared to stick your head up above the crowd. So when you're dealing with that kind of pressure, like I said, I took everything out. Not to mention when the band had broken up before I was over $1 million in the hole. So a few things like that. Yeah, it'll cause you to wake up in the middle of bed and not know where you are. Yes, sir. Nothing? You're up.
All right. First of all, this thing right here is Silver Rain Reprise that I wrote for you since you never got me. I'm meeting you the second time. I wrote you this. I'm able to say.
Okay.
I don't know if you can take items.
I'm not supposed to. The lawyer won't let me, but
Silver Rain Reprise from you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. But question.
The question, the biggest one I'm ever going to ask. I got a bucket list. I'm on a light vest defibrillator. I'm getting a heart implant soon. Biggest question. How would you do about a duet with Love Machine?
Say the last part again?
How would you do with a Love Machine duet? Would that ever be possible if somebody said, may I please be that guy from Andy in '87 to sing?
The short answer is no, and I'll tell you why. We are managed by the same people that manage Iron Maiden. We had a problem. Maiden also had a problem. This is hairy legal stuff you're talking about. For the same reason as this. You would not believe some of the things that happened. Maiden had a situation where they brought a girl up on stage and she was wearing a tube top. She fell out. Bruce never touched her. It's on video. The girl then turned around and sued the band for $2 million. We used to do a thing where we brought people up on stage in DuBois in Texas. After we had our couple of incidences and Maiden had their incidents, we said no more. A couple of people spoil it for everybody else. So not only did it change the way we do things, it changed the way we approach our shows. So we live in such a litigious society anymore. You wouldn't believe what we're told we can and can't do before we come out here. It sucks sometimes. Yes, sir.
So the 1986 movie Trick or Treat with Gene Simmons, Ozzy Osbourne. Were you ever approached to play the role of Sammy, and do you think they were inspired by you for that character?
Well, the characters, he looks a little like me. Penelope Spheris that did Wayne's World, in the Decline of the Western Civilization. Penelope came to me with a script, and she goes, what do you think? And so I read it, and I called her back. I said, I don't think it's very good. And she goes, no, it sucks. And I says, well, get them to do a rewrite. So they did a few rewrites, and they were all equally as bad, just different kind of bad. So she went on, you know, to do other stuff. But I would say when the movie finally came out, I thought it was a lot better than the original scripts we saw, because it stunk. You know, I mean, it was really bad. You know, and Hollywood rewrites are pretty common, but it's odd that somebody would give somebody something so unpolished and expect them to sign up on it to begin with, as that was. Yes, sir.
In 40 years, you've toured with who knows how many bands, played with in festivals. If you had one band you could do a tour with, a full tour, whether opening or headlining over, who would it be?
I would say Maiden, because we're family, and we've had some of the most fun times together because, like I said, it really is a communal environment when we're on the road together. I'll go on their buses, they'll come on our buses, you know, I mean, I've told this story a number of times, but there's a song Maiden has called Wasted Years. And when we did that tour with them, I remember we were in Italy, and Bruce and I were on the bus, and we were talking one night, and there's a line in the song, "Another city goes by in the night," and it was just the two of us up there talking in the front lounge. And I'm looking out the window, and some town was going by. You know, so it's silly stuff, little stuff like that.
Oh,
but it's, like I said, it creates a real communal environment. So, I mean, it's not, you know, some big funny story I could tell you, but it just, I think that's the stuff that means the most to us. Yes, sir.
First question, is that a red month watch?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I don't see a red monk watch. But I do have one from the guy in California. The guy that made this for me is a guy named Pascal. He owns a place called Riff Raff Leathers. He used to make all Lemmy's cowboy boots and stuff like that, and he's really, really good.
I was going to ask, you know how you say interviews are boring and journalists. Is there something that journalists are always getting wrong about you that you want to just set the record straight on?
No, but, you know, journalists, it's like any other trade, like a carpenter or plumber. You know, 10% stink, 10% are really good, and everybody else kind of falls somewhere in the middle. You know, so it depends on how prepared they are. Like newspaper guys are the worst because they don't want to do their homework. First thing they say when you pick up the phone is, "So, tell me about the record," which is code for I haven't listened to the record. You know, and so my question back to them is, "No, you tell me about the record," you know, which puts them on the spot. They got to fill up 500 words in their column 3 times a week, and they don't want to listen to everything that comes through. And I understand it, you know. But like I said, what we're doing now, engaging in dialogue, is a lot more fun than doing that with them. Yes, sir.
Who's the hottest chick you banged in LA?
Wow.
You don't want to know what's going through my head.
There wasn't one.
No, I'll tell you the hottest one I didn't.
Tracy Lord.
She was I guess you would call her a supermodel. I met her in Japan, and nothing happened. So I run into her again a couple months later in LA. And, you know, we have a couple of drinks, end up at my house, and she decides she doesn't want to do anything. Okay, fair enough. I ain't forcing myself on anybody, you know. So a couple of days later, it's about 1 in the morning, and I hear, and I open the door, and it's her standing there drunk. She says, "I have come here to rape you." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Come on in here." I took her in the guest bedroom. I marched her down. I set her down on the bed. I said, "You think I'm some sort of freaking light switch you can just turn on and off?" She said, "Go to sleep. Get up and leave in the morning."
Wow.
There you go, man.
Hey, man. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I don't have the question. Just say, you are my hero.
Well,
Thank you very much. My dream is to.
Well, see me back there, and I'll give you that money I told you I would. Yes, ma'am. A very complex individual. He was human like anybody else, but he had moments of real insecurity. And I won't go into detail because it wouldn't be fair to him. But I knew him pretty well, and we had some fun times together. But like anybody else, I mean, there was a very public squabble that happened between us back in the 90s. It was nothing, you know, but he was enormously complex. I think all artists are to some degree, some more than others, and I would put him in the some more than others category. The image you saw of him and the man was two different things. Not that he was living a lie, because he wasn't. What you saw is what you got, but you didn't see everything of who he was. But I'll tell you a funny story about him. The last show that we did together was about 2 years before he passed. We were in Romania. We were playing this festival, and it was just ungodly hot. And I mean, somebody said, because they measure everything in Celsius, but they tried to figure it out what it was in Fahrenheit. It's about 105. And I knew, because we had been on the plane together, him and I, the day before, and I knew he was not doing well. And so I was concerned about him. And so when I got off the stage, they were going on right after us, and my tail was dragging between my legs. And I kind of dragged myself in his dressing room, and I said, listen, you have got to make sure you stay hydrated today. I said, it is unbelievably hot out there. You've got to make sure you got fluids in there. Now I look, he's sitting at a table like this. He's got a half-eaten Reese's peanut butter cup, which may not sound like a big deal to you guys, but they don't sell Reese's peanut butter cups in Romania. So where he got it, I don't know. He's got a glass about yay big, half full of Jack and Coke, and it's got ice in it. And he holds up his glass to me. He goes, I intend to stay hydrated. I have many ice cubes in this glass. And I threw my hands up. I go, what am I wasting my breath for? You know, I go, I'm telling you, you got to stay. And I turned around and walked out, you know. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, my question is, I've been reading a lot on the W.A.S.P Nation Facebook and Twitter account. People have been saying that there's been a lot of use of backing tracks and lip syncing on this tour, and I want to know what your response to that is, and are we getting an authentic rock and roll experience on this tour?
And what magazine do you work for?
I don't work for any. I just been reading that.
Well, I noticed your Paul Stanley shirt there.
Yeah.
To answer your question, yes, we are using backing tracks. You want to know why?
Yes, sir.
When we go into a studio, and let me clarify that statement a little bit. That's me singing it. But when we go in a studio, we do choruses, we double, triple, quadruple those vocals. So my feelings were, when I listened to live YouTube, and we weren't doing that, it sounded thin. When we started supplementing it, it sounded better. If I'm a fan and I'm coming to a show, I want that thing to sound as good as it can. There are other bands, the Queens of the world, people, they cannot duplicate 24 vocals at one time. That's what they do on those records. If you want it to sound like those records, you got to have some help. Now, in defense, I guess maybe what you're asking, is it fair for a band to go out and use only those? No, that is not fair. Because like I said, I take a lot of pride in what I do, you know, for the lead vocals that I do. But when it comes to vocals, or when it comes to orchestration, we went out, we did the Crimson Idol the first time without orchestration. It was okay. It sounded all right. It's kind of like the Who doing Live at Leeds. They're what they would do with Tommy. But when we did the 20th anniversary of the tour, we took the orchestration with us. And we went into production rehearsals. And I had never heard it like that before, because the only time I ever heard it with orchestration was the album. And I went in there and I stood in the middle of that room and I heard that orchestration with the live band, and it made the hair stand on the back of my neck. And I thought, good God, listen to this. I've never heard this like this before. To me, that was a treat. and I don't give a shit what anybody says. If I'm a fan, that's what I want to hear. You know. So again, if somebody's trying to bullshit an audience, no, I don't go along with that at all. You know, you're out there to do a job, do your job. But to supplement it, absolutely not. You know, I want to hear it. Yes, sir.
How did you end up in the Village People movie back in, what was it, 1980? Was that the first time you got that question?
Well done.
I thought we had buried that. Shit.
We're fans.
I'll answer the question, but I got to tell you a story before that. About 2 years ago, where we live in California is about an hour north of LA. It's where we live is not unusual to see other celebrities out there. Right? And so I went into the drugstore to get something, and this guy comes up to me. Now, Bruce Jenner was also in that movie. This guy comes up to me and he goes, "Wow, Blackie Lawless, you were," and I can't even remember. Can't Stop the Music, that's what it was.
Yeah.
He goes, "You were in Can't Stop the Music." I ran into Bruce Jenner about an hour ago. I went over and had a drink with him. Now, the chances of that happening in LA are not that remote, because that's the kind of thing that can happen there sometimes. I mean, about a month before we started this tour, I was going somewhere in the neighborhood, and this woman pulls up behind me, and I hear this squeaky little voice says, "Can you tell me how to get to the chiropractor?" You know, and I turn around and it's Barbara Streisand. Oh. Now, there's a big plate glass window with big letters written on it, painted on it, says chiropractor. I didn't say a word to her, I just pointed to the sign. You know, she looks at it and goes, "That's not it." You know, and I go, "Lady, I'm not the guide here. I don't know where it is." You know? So that's the kind of stuff that goes on out there. But anyway, back to your question. We were broke, and they were offering us scale, which was $250 a day at the time. This is '79. So yeah, when you're broke and you're looking for where your next meal is coming from, you'll take the money. Yes, sir. No?
Me?
You like?
Have you been in touch with Chris Holmes recently? Are you guys still mutual, or?
Chris is living in France, I heard.
Yeah.
And I haven't spoken to him. Listen, you ever been in a bad relationship where a woman left you?
Yep.
Have you been in one of those?
Yep.
Where a woman left you?
Yep.
Did you take her back?
Nope.
All right. Suppose you took her back and she left you for a second time.
No.
Okay. Suppose you took her back for a second time, but she signed not one, but 2 documents and received money both times that bought her out far and away more than what she deserved. Would you take her back?
No.
No, you would not. Next question.
Hey, how you doing? I believe, you know, there was a time when Elvis had a headline in a national newspaper, "This man must be stopped." I was in D.C., you know, when I was younger, and then there you are, okay, on a newspaper saying, "This man must be stopped." During that time, knowing you're an Elvis fan, were you able to recognize that and say, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool, my hero, I'm on the same thing," or were you still in the fight?
I wouldn't say it was cool, but this thing, and we're going to do tonight, you're going to see us, we do a tutorial on this live. This thing rears its head about every 20 years, and it's nothing new. It's happening. It's happening right now as we speak with social media, censorship with that. You know, it's like, I don't care if you're some sort of a Nazi, Muslim worshiping, you know, I don't care what you are or what you say. You have the right to say it. If I don't want to listen to it, I turn it off. You know, but you have the right to say it. Millions of men have fought and died in this country for that right. You know, so listen, you put enough people in this room, if somebody's full of shit with what they're saying, you guys are smart enough to figure it out. You don't need somebody to tell you you can't listen to it. You know, so no. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to know from your point of view, like an artist, a great artist as you are, what Are you able to pick one or two young bands from 2000s till today that you consider can be like a good representation of good music or good metal?
You know, honestly, I don't listen to a lot of new stuff. And I tell people it's kind of like being a mechanic, a car mechanic. You work on brakes all day long, the last thing you want to do is go home and work on brakes. You know, it's a little like that. And especially when I'm in the studio, I don't listen to anything because I don't want the influence. You know, I just want to focus on what I'm doing. You know, so I don't, when I listen to stuff, you know, like before I left LA to start the tour, you mentioned Elvis. That's all I was listening to was Elvis before I left. So I'll go through periods where, you know, that's all I'll listen to for a while, and then I'll listen to something else for a while. But I don't listen to as much new stuff as maybe I should. Yes, sir.
I phoned a friend and he asked this question: what's your most underappreciated W.A.S.P song?
Well, I would say it's probably a record, and that goes back to the KFD thing. You know, like I said, that was an inventive, visually graphic record. I mean, I listen to that. I don't listen to a lot of our stuff, but I listened to that record, I don't know, about 3 months ago, and I was stunned at the imagery of it. And I thought, shit, how did I do this? You know, it's like, I mean, it was like the imagery of it was insane.
Dark.
You know, and
That
it's like,
pig on stage, though.
well, yeah, all that. We refer to him as Steve Austin, the $6 million pig. You know, but you know, like I said, the imagery of it to me was probably the best thing we've ever done. But it got caught up in the crossfire of what was happening in the 90s, and we weren't the only ones that got run over by that truck. All right, guys, they're telling me I got to go, so they got to open.
Thank you, Blackie.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Great.